Hi, today we're sitting down with Rosalie Ripa, who's working with ActiveArticulation.com. Well, I introduced you, but please introduce yourself, Rosalie.
So Rose is fine. ActiveArticulation.com is my website. I am the CEO, founder, and operator of Active Articulation. And what we do is pretty much a data-driven approach to people analytics. So a lot of the times I find that people or companies who try to craft teams and try to meet deadlines don't do it with the right demographics. And when I say demographics, I don't mean, this many women and this many men. I mean, there are certain types of learners. It's not just, I guess, filtered down through your gender. It's how you learn, communicate, structure your thoughts, and really how you work. So what we do is we understand the dynamic of people, vary that up, and also with the same, I guess, influence and processes, I rather really build on the operation structure and help any company that has hired me out. So, I mean, I have different structures available. So if a company just wants me for, let's say, 10 hours, a month, just to, I guess, see if the meetings are on point. And if they're not, a lot of the times they can hire me for longer. But sometimes you just need a person to either understand why your retention rate is low, why your deadlines are not being met. And these are my expertise. And this is where I shine.
So if I understand correctly, you fill in the gaps in human resources by understanding how people communicate, how they learn, and helping the company in question react as such.
So to me, human resources are pretty much on whatever dynamic that's taught in, I don't know, human resources class. I don't like human resources because they've never helped anyone. There are plenty of case studies out there on Twitter where so many, let's say, women went to human resources and they were continuously assaulted and human resources did nothing.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, there are other, I mean, human
Hey, this is a
resources.
real interview, as you can see, guys. For the record,
So what I like to do
I
is
should
I
say,
like to
I'm listening.
take the Lean Sigma 6 approach, and I'm a black belt.
Mm,
Very proud of that. So when I say data, right, I understand that every decision we make is a metric. It's a form of data intake, how we process information, how quickly we process information. If we, let's say, are the best developer, but nobody talks to us, which is fine, there are those people exist. When I say we build metrics, we build metrics, based on people, decisions, operations, things like that. Every characteristic and quality that a person possesses, I guarantee you, HR does not say, okay, what kind of person are you? HR is really there as a governmental role that does nothing. I'm not a fan of HR. I'm a fan of mathematical probability, understanding things, and seeing, let's say, distribution ratios charted out. So my example is always the developer who's absolutely gifted and talented, who every company needs to develop whatever software, especially in the age of modernity, 2021. That developer might not work well with others. So what do? Okay, should you fire the developer? Does HR think about these things? No, they just think about seniority and, well, we're there to protect the higher ups. So it's not about seniority or protecting higher ups with me. It's about moving your company forward. It's about understanding what works. And if you have deadlines to meet and your brilliant engineer is holding everybody back, maybe it's because he's not exactly a people person and is very task oriented. These types of metrics HR doesn't intake. As a matter of fact, very few companies intake my type of understanding and parsing through people. And that's because what I did was I've understood how process development works with Lean Sigma 6. There's waste, right? There's efficiency, there's waste reduction, there's management. And I just reconverted it to my method, the active articulation method, and said, how do we move operations, projects, teams along?
Mm.
And
So
that's
you
what I
fill in
did.
the gaps in operations. Sorry about that. But you
Yes,
fill.
yes.
Okay.
Operations, people, so
Yeah.
I don't think you can separate people from operations. And I think the problem with HR is that they do.
That makes perfect.
Yeah. So I'm looking for
Mercy.
companies who want to innovate and who are pretty much looking for growth.
I love it. All right.
I pretty much ask my clients what their weakest areas are. So let me use you as my case study. Chris, what have been your hurdles over the last 2-3 months? Because if a company is looking for a consultant, yeah, I ask you, what is your weakest point? And a lot of companies are like, what do you mean what my weakest point is? I have no weakest point. We all have a weakest point, and it is important to identify. I can tell you what my weakest points are, and usually companies ask me, and they said, why should I hire you? Because no person is perfect. And so the second you understand where you lack is where you can bring someone in to bridge the gap.
Wow. Okay. All right. So which industries do your consultations apply to?
Well, I can work with literally anyone. So let me use you as a case study again, right? And you see a lot of people want to go through a set list of questions or delegations or pretty much what they've done throughout their entire life. That's the problem. No one's ever thought about innovating that. So would you like to answer my question? Like, for example, because here we're definitely on an interview.
I'm happy
So
to.
let's use you as one of my case studies, so your listeners, so you can boast your skill sets, and I can highlight mine. And
Boast.
no, Chris has many skill sets.
All right, sorry.
And honestly, so I know Chris very well for your listeners. Chris is a very good friend of mine. And actually I compliment a lot of what he lacks, and he certainly compliments a lot of what I lack. And
This is true. This is a fact.
yeah, and we have a great synergy as friends and doing work and business together. So go ahead, Chris. Sorry to take the spotlight away from you.
No, there's no, you are in spotlight right now. What was the question?
What are some of your faults?
I am a turtle strategically. So I will be defensive and create long-term methods of sources, right? But then because I'm so attached to that happening, I end up defensive method of repetitive actions and like I end up protecting my actions, my habit to maintain that high possibility that those incremental processes of 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 accruing resources will actually work out in the end. And then what ends up happening is, regardless, I have to go out of those defenses anyway. And then when I'm out of those and all of my resources are sort of fluid, all of a sudden I have a lot of potential, and I can multiply my productivity many times fold. However, because I'm focused on the product, it always ends with me picking a product, let's say, or picking an end result, let's say, and then defending that, and then creating a defensive structure that accrues resources around that. Um, like true and very oriented around order of operations, let's say. And so literally I know that if I was in the second state like all the time, or
Mhm.
I'm just like in, it feels like a psychological fault, but it's just like a lack of that defensive versus the slowly time. If I wasn't, if I was always in that second state, I I'd be much more productive all of the time. That is my weakness, and I am insane for having just gone into that. That's the answer.
Right. So, someone like me, and as your friend, and I do that, I can detach you from the project because as a business owner who's so rigorously by the book with, the way how to do things, having someone who has their own methods, right? Their own understanding that has worked in different industries to disattach you from it and say, hey, you've spent this much time on this. And even the way you internalize things, you're very much part of your company and your organization, as are many business owners. I mean, that's not at all something unique to the situation, and you should be, because this is part of you, and you should be proud of what you're building. But brevity, disassociation is something, let's say, that I would help you work on, if we were to work together on a larger scope. And this is how I pretty much assess the situation.
I've been
When
told.
someone, right, and when someone cannot tell me what they're not good at, say, okay, and then I pose other questions. I'm like,
Mhm.
what has been your median income or your earnings or your profits? And a lot of the times they're like, I can't tell you this off the top of my head. I'm like, is it because you haven't reviewed the books yourself, because you don't have books to review, or because you're so busy doing everything, you forgot to do your books? And based on the answer, I'm able to find out the weaknesses. And the weaknesses are not bad. I'm not here to rip apart my clients. I'm just here to make them more money.
Well, when you're in management, you can't afford to think about your weaknesses when you're talking to your subordinates, let's say, all the time. Like some people can, I assume. But some people, their minds are more delicate, and
Well,
it's okay. That's why we have other people that have our back. Like I don't like looking at all my weaknesses either, but you see them 100%. If I like looking at all my weaknesses, all of my weaknesses are gone.
right.
In fact, I'm better at speaking than I used to. Yeah.
But those are your strengths too, which is why you're a great marketer. That's why you're very personable. And you, Chris, unlike many people, can communicate with a wide sect of people, different
Thank
types
you.
of people. I can't do that. And you know this about me. I mean, in a
But I
professional
love
level,
you. I like that about you.
right. In a professional level,
You're like a sharp cheek.
yes,
You're
yes.
very
On the
strong.
personal level, I can't do that. So when I'm hired for something, I understand the different dynamics that, let's say, a manager or a superior, a lead, a supervisor, and I can have, because I know their type. And usually, and we have to group people. We have to group people because in mathematics and nature and everything, there are very easy logistical groupings. And as unique as we are, we all fall under a type of grouping. And that's how my mind works. So if I know I don't like someone and it's a networking event, I'm like, I'm not going to go to them. That's my weakness. which is why you're going to be like, hey, let me tell you about my friend or this great business that I'm working with. So it's important, exactly what we just did. As friends, we've identified each other's synergy, and that's what you have to do in the business and professional scope. A lot of people don't do that. They just build teams and break teams apart without ever considering the types of synergies people have. And that, to me, is the most detrimental thing that most corporate does. And they constantly do. They don't promote correctly. Their hiring process is very poor. I think you should always have a third party alongside your hiring process. And by third party, I don't mean someone from the Philippines. I mean someone like me who understands dynamics, because there's plenty of people, which is why companies don't have high retention rates, that are overlooked because they're hard workers, they're better workers, and the management job is constantly threatened.
So, so if I understand correctly,